What actually is good cosplay craftsmanship? Well, it's notoriously the thing that a lot of viewers of cosplay craftsmanship contests can't seem to wrap their head around. If it lights up, it should win, am I right? But I'd argue that it's also a thing that some cosplay craftsmanship competitors can't seem to wrap their head around either. And there's a reason for that. It's mostly because we are in the Wild Cosplay Contest West. And every contest is different, and you should read the rules for any and all contests you are interested in to figure out exactly the criteria that competitors are being judged by before determining if a contest is right for you. But it's also because while even though reading the rules is great, it still is the Wild Cosplay Contest West. And there can be a legitimate lack of transparency for any given contest that can result in people just not knowing, in a general sense, what to make of the word craftsmanship. Hi, hello, my name is Telekinetic Maniac. Kinda, that's my handle. You can call me Mad Dog. And I have a pretty great cosplay competition track record, as well as a cheeky little BFA for fashion design. So today, after a very long hiatus, because I've been working for so long now on a different project that's driving me a little goddamn crazy at this point, and I don't even know what to make of it anymore. I really just need a break, so this is my break to me, but also to you. I will attempt to answer the question, what actually is good cosplay craftsmanship? With a bit of a focus on cosplay contests because that really is where this question is the most relevant in this space, while making an incredibly mediocre Halloween costume. Alright, I have a terrible breakout, so you're not seeing my face, but it's October 1st today, so I want to work on my Halloween costume. And we're starting with a $5 prop, and by $5 prop I mean I spent $5 on this ring because I saw it at Michael's when I was effing around looking for stuff. It's like a floral ring or something. And I thought it could be perfect for this key and I don't want to spend any other money. So we're gonna just try to like look for random crap in my house, like this paper towel tube, and make it work. So here's the plan. I'm making Mono, by the way, like Mono from Little Nightmares 2. He has a prop key that he like hooks to the side of his jacket. Yeah, I've really been working on that one project for so long, I'm literally about to entirely forget to actually say what I'm doing. And I'm gonna say like, this is the whole plan. Like, I don't even know how to make videos anymore, send help. In my defense, I was probably subconsciously worried about time. Like, the cosplay in itself may or may not change by the end of the video. And maybe I intended to announce what I was doing in post all along. Really, who's to say? But yeah, I'm working on Mono. This is the whole plan. Yeah, that's the plan. It's a key. It's not exactly the right size in general. This is a little bit bigger than I want it to be, but we're making this out of crap, so who cares? I will say I'm a little annoyed because the key in general is more detailed than I thought it was. These models in general are actually very detailed. They're really lovely. Little Nightmares is a lovely series, but like, well, lovely. But yeah, there's kind of a lot of details on this actually, and I'm not sure how far I want to go with it. So I'm starting with this. I'm gonna fiddle around with random things that I find, and we're gonna see how it goes. I did mess around with a bunch of stuff, mostly building up shapes with newspaper and duct tape, and eventually settling on the idea that it didn't matter at all what I would use to build these base shapes, because I could totally make an overarching surface layer of this prop out of paper mache and cover up any really weird material choices. And that's when I got this idea. I've been searching around my house. All right, you may think that you've seen chaos crafting before, but have you seen this? Yeah, so you may be wondering what the F I'm doing. I think I'm gonna shove this in the tube to try and make it a little bit more stable, and also build up the shape of the tube because EVA foam now costs an arm and a leg if you live in America and need to import it. And we lost Joanne's at the same time. Isn't that great? In previous videos, I've defined craftsmanship as technical understanding and artful execution of that technical understanding, or in one different word, finesse. Video over. You can all go home. You're welcome. I'm kidding. I have so much more to say. Please don't look at the runtime though. When defining this, I've also talked a lot about how finding finesse is something you have to learn how to do yourself, and I really stand by that. In fact, back when I first started putting actual effort into the content on this channel, instead of just making like effectively scrapbook videos of conventions for my friends and I made a whole video on how one can improve craftsmanship, where I laid out steps you could take to try to improve, but stated that ultimately finesse isn't something that can really be taught, it's just something you have to learn for yourself. I may not be able to teach it to you because it's not just getting somehow even better materials or adding in details that aren't there or just making things really complicated for no reason. But you can develop your choices to be more thoughtful. You can find finesse and you can learn it. And I really stand by this. Heads up, that video is not even a little bit visually interesting, but the steps laid out there and the idea that I can't just teach you finesse, like magically give you good craftsmanship, is a real one. Craftsmanship really is legitimately just something you have to learn to notice for yourself. But over the years, I've also been able to articulate more and more on how to go about trying to learn how to recognize good craftsmanship. And I think one of the more informative ways of trying to notice for oneself what's widely considered good is to also learn to notice what isn't. Hence the mediocre Halloween costume. Side note, I've spoken on this before, but just a reminder that not everything you make needs to be made with the height of your craftsmanship abilities, and arguably shouldn't be. Even if you are really into craftsmanship contests or just making really well-crafted work. Please think of craftsmanship as a choice that you can make if you want, rather than something every crafter must aspire to and must always aspire to. Because for real, it is just a choice. And you can still love your projects absolutely, even if they're not at the height of your craftsmanship or craftsmanship in general. Although also for the record, please don't hype up bad craft as good craft. Like, you can absolutely make things and like things that are not well made. Like, absolutely cherish them. I for sure love hyping up just flashy designs and like the level of craft that I'm aiming for. But like, looking at cosplay as a community right now, it's kind of hard to not see us as being on the cusp of it's not that deeping and just let people like things our way into a total slop fest where nothing is credible anymore, which kind of takes away from all that we actually have achieved as a community. But yeah, when it comes to your choices and how you engage with this hobby in the many ways that only affects yourself and what you're doing, you're legitimately welcome to create at whatever skill level you want. Now, to be extremely fair, when it comes to craftsmanship contests, there are other things that go into the actual judging that you may want to consider. Like, it's not just as simple as noticing and fixing up some areas that may need improving, and boom, you start winning contests. These things are fundamentally different, and there are very real choices that go into the making of a build in contest judging that can make or break your chances, but they go hand in hand, and that's how I want to talk about them. So let's get back to my, shall we say, scuffed choices. And let's talk about how they're working in terms of overall craftsmanship, but also in terms of craftsmanship judging. Okay, if you didn't like what I just did with that, your day is about to get a lot worse because I learned the rules explicitly to break them. I need this to be overall thicker, so I'm gonna do this. This may or may not work. We'll find out. How you personally feel about this choice aside, this is actually a really interesting choice to look at in terms of cosplay craftsmanship competitions, and just a deeper look at trying to define good craftsmanship beyond, like, finesse and whatever. Because in some contests, this nonsense might be rewarded, while in others it absolutely won't be. Cosplay contest judging criteria, and rubrics for that matter if they're available, are different for every contest. Fam. I'm not just saying read the rules for my fucking health. I'm saying it because different contests value different aspects of the creative process and can weight them differently in judging. Like, I'm not saying I'd recommend this, but I do think I'm gonna be able to make it work, and it is thicker. Like, for example, a contest where creative use of available materials, or maybe even sustainable use of materials, is valued in the judging criteria. This choice might do really well. It's not a choice that everyone would make, and I'm certainly recycling plastic that would otherwise be in landfill. However, in a contest that values traditional crafting techniques and keeping those arts alive, there's actually a whole rabbit hole you can go down about, like, protected crafts, just like if you're interested, by the way. Maybe sculpting this in clay and casting it or fabricating it out of wood and sanding it smooth would have been choices that would be valued more. Good craftsmanship as a bare bones concept is finesse, but that's not the only thing that actually goes into good craftsmanship. If you thought the worst crafting video you had ever seen was a 5-minute crafts video, does mine beat it? I think it's gonna look pretty good and wonky when it's paper mache, but also like solidly wonky. Like not like I did it wrong, like it's just a wonky key, and I'm pretty excited about it. I'm actually kind of annoyed with how well this is working. I might do another layer, it looks pretty good. Unironically, this is just exactly how you sculpt things. Like you can either add or subtract, and you don't necessarily have to do this with anything quote unquote proper. So I just added to this shape and it looks how I want. So I'm probably gonna tape this down a little bit, try and get these fibers a little bit more under control, try to get this like poofiness a little bit more under control. But then I'm probably going to try and find some pink foam to make this part. Annoyingly enough, what I'm saying here is true. These are the principles behind sculpting, like adding material and or taking away material to get the form you want. Those are the basic principles. Therefore, what I'm doing, adding layers of faux fur to build up the basic shape, is actually checking general skill boxes. Not necessarily craftsmanship contest specific boxes, but it does show both an understanding of the technique and, dare I say it, an artful execution of said technique. Put the tomato down. I am finessing the shit out of that faux fur if I do say so myself. I gotta reel it in. This could have been a disastrous, lumpy mess. And it could have easily fallen apart had I used less tape or been less careful with the fur fibers. Unfortunately for everybody watching this video with their eye or eyes, I understand my materials well enough to do what I need to do to make them lay flat and prep them with some more duct tape for the paper mache layers later on. Okay, it's October 3rd. Happy Full Metal Day / what is it? Mean Girls Day. I've been struggling with my camera batteries the last couple days, but I have been, and also I didn't have a lot of time to work, but I've been effing around with some pink foam. We got theoretically like a little key piece and this, and you may be wondering, have I lost my mind? And the answer is yes. I'm gonna try to like take this and like cut this wedge and stick this in here, and it's probably gonna go bad. So let's do this together. Listen, I'm not saying I'm a world-class fabricator, but I am actually pretty proud. I thought of making a weird tall thin trapezoid and then kind of like inverting it and cutting that out of cardboard to like insert into one another, and essentially using that to create a custom shape that tapers. This is actually pretty trad fabrication, especially compared to the chaos sculpting earlier. But as you can see, it also shows true understanding of the shape and good execution and finesse. And I can't believe I got my brain off those cursed faux fur train tracks and thought this one up, TBH. Like, I'm genuinely proud I was able to derail. Anyway, understanding and finesse, like generally good craftsmanship, is legitimately important. You won't get anywhere without it. Like, truly, it goes hand in hand with how contests evaluate craftsmanship. But these things also aren't entirely equal. Like, they don't just balance the scales perfectly. Whether you're chaos crafting or using the most by-the-book traditional techniques, or maybe a bit of both, the choices you make matter, and they'll always come into play in this evaluation. It's important to read the rules to determine what a specific contest values and make good choices from there. It really is. But this ain't all I got to say. When making a prop out of found stuff, one of the biggest things you have to consider is how to keep it structurally sound. Even if you're doing something like gluing a found object to foam, the type of glue, the weight of the object versus the foam, how many contact points there are, just a lot of things have to be considered. Since I sculpted this key base out of trash and tape and it's not spectacularly sound, I broke out the tried and true cosplay prop making method of paper mache covered in wood glue. Because I also have various open bottles of glue on hand and a lot of paper just waiting to be recycled. Including the very paper I drew the pattern for this key out on, which I thought was clever to use in the key itself, and I showed my dad and he was not impressed at all. You're watching?
Yep.
Pretty good, right? For the paper mache, my pattern.
It's brilliant.
Come on. Essentially, the paper mache method I'm using here is done by taking pieces of paper, soaking them in water in a water-based glue mixture, and laying the paper pieces all overlapping in many layers on some sort of prepared surface. For transparency, I'm doing 2 layers for this project just due to time constraints. Because after waiting for it all to dry, always wait for it to fully dry, you'll end up with a fairly stiff, papery surface to work with. In this case, the prepared surface is my trash key, but a lot of times people will use something large and inflatable that can deflate to leave a solid, hollow structure when the paper mache dries out. For the record, there are also other ways to do paper mache with different mixtures and ways of using the paper. Like, some people turn the paper into pulp and mix up more of a clay when combining it with their glue, but this is the method I went with for this project.
I'm not saying it's not jank, but I am hype about it.
Depending on your project, there are different ways you can finish the surface, but the wood glue method is popular among prop makers because wood glue is so viscous. When it dries, it adds a ton to the structural integrity of the piece. And if you water down your layers and are careful with this process and any filling, it can also be used to smooth out the surface, which is really great for folks with spaces not conducive to using any toxic materials. But I do currently have access to a good space for that, and I'm going to be doing something a little different with smoothing my key later on. This process is pretty cool and budget friendly and super versatile, as you can see. Like, I'd really recommend more people try it because it can be taken really, really far, and it can really highlight fabrication skills. And fun fact, I actually did just take it a lot further with a prop that I made for Anime Boston 2026. But more importantly, the paper mache process shows off something really important to remember when it comes to cosplay craftsmanship contests. It can hide the entire base sculpt. And let me repeat that because I'm not sure I emphasized what I wanted to emphasize quite right. It can hide the entire base sculpt. All that chaotic fur and duct tape sculpting is completely hidden within. Which is great for me, it's what I want. I want it to never see the light of day again. But that's a double-edged sword because really, it's completely hidden. And now, if I weren't posting this insane video, don't look at the runtime, it would be anyone's guess how I actually made this piece. Who knows? I could have made a much simpler all-pink foam build. Or maybe I lucked out and found a big key shape at the craft store like Spirit Halloween for a limited time, IDK, and I just paper mache'd over it and tried to pass it off as work that's all my own. If this video didn't exist, who knows? Not me, that's for sure. I repressed it. Layer 2 complete. So it's time for wood glue. How many times can I listen to this on repeat before I lose my mind? Oh, actually, also before I start on this, I've cut some of the more egregious bubbles so that they can be flattened with the wood glue. As an artist, I love letting my work speak for itself. It doesn't bother me that not everyone will know my ridiculous sculpting techniques. If anything, it's a fun fact that I can use to terrorize people curious enough to ask. But in the cosplay craftsmanship competition space, you can't always let your work speak for itself, or the actual work you put in might be missed. If you don't communicate the inner workings of your pieces through verbal explanations, and hopefully some visual aids as well, you may not be judged accordingly. And that would be doing yourself a huge disservice. Judges aren't stupid. Craftsmanship judges can and will pick up on a lot, and they can infer a lot from even the smallest traces left over from the process. Even when this key is complete, I think it would be obvious at a glance to the average judge that paper mache was a huge part of its process, but it's not the entire process. And I'd argue that a lot of good cosplay craftsmanship doesn't just boil down to what you've done, but what you communicate about it as well. And you don't have to be a world-class writer and public speaker, like you don't need to be the best, most succinct and clear wordsmith. Like we literally all know I'm not, yada runtime yada, and it's simply never affected how people judge my work. Because most people just aren't assholes. Like they'll try to give you the time of day, and they have in my experience listened to whatever I blurt out. For real though, I'm once again asking you to not look at the runtime of this video. But being able to get the basics of your process across is valuable in the craftsmanship space. In a space where you might have mere minutes to be prejudged, in a space in general at the con where you just want to have a nice quick informative hallway convo with a stranger who took time to say something nice to you, what you're able to communicate is in a lot of ways all that you actually did. If a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it and all that. So break out the language arts abilities and hey, do a little practicing on what to say if you need to. Hello, we're in my garage. I still have a crazy, horrible breakout. The weather has been like fluctuating between 80 degrees and 20 degrees and my skin ain't happy about it. But I've been making progress on my key. I'm really excited with how this is coming out. Oh my god, I'm so excited. Like, look at how cool. I did put a ton of glue on it, as you can see. Like, it's gone from newspaper white to wood glue color. And today, I'm gonna do this to it, which the last time I did this, it betrayed me. So I'm not looking forward to this. The last time I did this was for Guts. I've done this a gajillion times with different types of glues and different types of filler primers, and it's never betrayed me before. Until I did my Guts sword, where it gave me a crackle nail polish effect. And I don't know what's up, but it did kind of put me off the whole thing, and I did warn everybody to not do that. To not mix glue and spray product. But because this is like so all over the place, so hodgepodge sculpting with faux fur, I would really like a solid color before I do my actual filling. So we're trying it again. I hope it doesn't fail me. I'm really nervous. Also, Little Nightmares 3 came out today. It got terrible reviews. It didn't get terrible reviews. It did not get as good reviews as the first two games, so I'm not expecting a lot from it. I was worried about it just because it's like not the same devs is really what it comes down to, so we'll see how it goes. I'm excited. At least there's still Silent Hill F to play. I'm now on playthrough 2 of that, and obviously I have Little Nightmares 1 and 2 that I can replay if I feel terribly. Anyway, let's do some spray filler primer.
Oh no. Well, this is like full and not working. So, F my life. One sec.
Alright. Well, my filler primer is like half full, but it's like out of aerosol, so we're gonna try this stuff. I don't know if you can see it at all, because I wasn't expecting another close-up shot, but it's just regular sandable primer. Like I said, I was just hoping to get a base color to see the highs and lows better, so hopefully this will be fine.
I do think I'm gonna spend money on filler primer for like a final layer of primer for this when I've actually done my fills, but that's more so if it's still warm when I get that, and because I like having like a can of that on hand. I was so excited that I could use it, as I am for many projects. And I was bummed that the can malfunctioned, so I would like to replace that so that I can have it and have it working.
Okay, here's the deal. It's 10:30. I'm leaving for the weekend soon for my mom's birthday trip. Yes, I'm going away in the middle of making this Halloween costume. I'm an idiot. Don't worry about it. But so we've got the key filled with nothing, just primed. I can't find my crappy wood filler, so we're using my good wood filler, aka Freeform Air. And we're also using spackle. My spackle, guys, I keep my spackle in this box with a palette knife and other spackle things. My palette knife is not there, so I got a popsicle stick instead. This is a little bit of a mess. I can't find anything I want, but I'm here. I've got my Oingo Boingo. I'm gonna try and fill stuff. Okay, this may not be as noticeable to people who don't deal in cosplay props or fabrication in a general sense, but I'm just gonna say it. I always overfill props because they're hobby projects. But fam, I'm doing this so fast because I have such a limited time here. It's actually egregious this time around. Like, I would like to formally apologize to everyone watching who gets how stupid this is, but most importantly, formally apologize to my wallet because Freeform Air is not inexpensive. I also just want to take a second to note here that Freeform Air is my favorite filler of all time. Not because it's related to the overarching conversation about craftsmanship or anything, but because it's a thing that I frequently use and people frequently ask me questions about because it doesn't look like other fillers. Although the word filler here is used very loosely, as Freeform Air is a sculptable 2-part dough epoxy. If I explained paper mache, so why not explain this too? Essentially, that means that this is a material that comes in 2 separate containers that has to be mixed at a certain ratio, in this case 1:1 by weight, although I'm kind of a loser who winged it with that measurement, and used, in this case applied to a project during a limited pot life. This, I believe, only has half an hour, which is To be fair, a pretty good pot life actually. And then you'll need to leave it to cure for a set amount of time in a certain range of temperature. In this case, 24 hours, and I think it's really just ultimately not boiling or freezing, for it to then chemically change and take on its final properties. It's more annoying to use than other fillers and more expensive, but it's sculptable and lightweight, meaning you can use the stuff and it'll become rigid and structurally sound and add almost no weight at all to your costume. And it's super easy to sand too once cured, so you don't have only the pot life to make the shape the best it can be in the add phase, you can really refine it in an additional subtract phase, which is why I have such a bad habit of overfilling personal projects. Unlike other fillers that are surface level only and need a base structure to have all the structural integrity for them, and will honestly sometimes still pop away even when you're putting a layer of glue down before applying them, this material can maintain its own shape. IMO, this shit is the coolest thing ever, and it particularly shines if you cast with it. Like, I love using it for mold making and casting projects, but I also really love it for fills, especially really scuffed fills that need the structural help it can offer. Out of the scuff things to fill, my favorite is filling sculpted Worbla pieces because it adheres so well to the breaking down texture of overworked Worbla, and it helps the structural integrity of the Worbla itself, which I will, funny story, be showing you a little bit of like later on in this video. But yeah, it's cool that I really never have to worry about a fill I made with this stuff just not working out. Like, provided it's given something to adhere to, it'll not just fill, but it'll completely hold its own shape. This isn't even an ad read, this is just a legitimate hyperfixation material of mine. And I get asked about it a metric ton, so I thought I'd try to nip some of those questions in the bud. Like, please do with this information as you will. Please utilize it. I don't want to regret putting it in this video. I really hope it helps someone. And anyway, back to my cosplay. I have gone on my weekend trip. I did hiking. My face is even worse, so are still hands. But it is time to attempt to sand this, and then I'm probably gonna need another layer of fills because I'm seeing so many things I didn't fill. That's what happens when you try and do this really fast when you should just be going on a trip. Oh well, here we go. So what I just said there while I'm mumbling this is true. I did kind of an job on filling this, and I may need to do more filling, but right now it's time for sanding. This took 12,000 years. No more, no less. Yeah, I'll speed through it for you, but for real, it took a long time, and I did not ever intend to spend this long on this silly little Halloween thing. I might have regrets. Okay, my breakout is not gone, but it is better, so I'm gonna try and film this and hope I don't regret it. It's October 16th. I've been working on my key wherever I can. It's been a very busy week, like very, very full days. I'm also doing like Halloween streams right now. Like, that's why I've been able to play Silent Hill F, for the record. But I've been sanding so much. I've been trying so hard to get stuff done, and I've made, I think, a ton of progress. I'm really happy with it. I'm hopefully gonna do some detail lines tonight, but oh my god, it has been such an eventful week. First of all, I'm sorry. We are going on this tangent. On frickin' Sunday, when I sat down to sand, I was wearing this sweatshirt. Okay? You see it? Good. That's a Dan and Phil Games sweatshirt. I didn't think anything of it. I don't even remember if it's in the footage or if I put it on after because I got cold, but I was wearing this fucking sweatshirt. And you wanna know what happened when I was done sanding on Sunday? They released the Are We in a Relationship video and finally came out as being a couple, and they've been a couple for 16 years, which we've all known, but I have been watching them since I was 12 because, hi, I'm in my late 20s and I'm queer, so of course I have been watching them since I was 12. So, oh my god, I'm losing my mind. I can't believe they actually like came out and said it. I thought they were gonna be private until the end of time. So I'm so happy for them. 10 out of 10. This is a relic now. They've rebranded, but whatever. New York Comic Con also happened this weekend. People are pissing themselves about New York Comic Con right now, as they always do. New York Comic Con's a time. I'm not really gonna talk about that, but I am gonna talk about my sanding a little bit. So if you wanna know my thoughts on New York Comic Con, stay tuned for that. It won't be explicitly about New York Comic Con, but it will be explicitly about craftsmanship and what it takes to create props and armor, so it'll be about New York Comic Con. Anyway, speaking of New York Comic Con, I was so excited when I saw New York Comic Con merch this year, and it is a goal of mine to one day get to that convention, but this year was not that year. And I saw their merch and I was like, I need this. Please, please get this for me. I was gonna shout out my friend, and I don't know if they want to be shouted out, so I'm just gonna call them friend. And today in the mail, I got merch from them. I'm so excited about this. It's the best thing in the whole world. Thank you, friend. I'm so excited. I will not be accepting criticism for wearing a t-shirt over a sweatshirt at this time, as it is very, very cold. Okay, I also went to the hardware store, got myself an emotional support can of filler primer. I'm hoping if it's warm enough, because obviously it has to be like a good temperature range to use this. I'm hoping if it's warm enough to get one coat of this on, because my original intention was to literally just spray a couple layers of this on to kind of smooth out imperfections, because I didn't want to put any effort into it, and that's fine for me for this costume. That's not quite true. My original plan included some very, very light filling and sanding after the first layer, even if it was mostly just a couple layers of filler primer. But wow, I oversimplified that so much I actually misspoke. Like, that is embarrassing. TBH, maybe this is just a clown makeup moment, like a Freudian slip that reveals that I really, really didn't want to fill in sand and wanted my fill in sand problems to just wander off. Oh well, regardless of what I remember the plan to be, it went to anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I'm hoping to get one layer of this on, but we'll see if it's warm enough, because last week it was like very, very warm and now it's frigid. Also at the hardware store, I did the time-honored Silent Hill cosplayer tradition of getting a piece of PVC pipe and whatever elbow joint happened to match the PVC pipe for a Silent Hill pipe. This is not related to mono, but this is pretty good, right? Like, I'm pretty happy with this. This is actually about as detailed as Shimizu Hanako's pipe is, like her steel pipes that she uses are. But I may have around with this and like add some Warbler scraps just to make this a little bit more interesting, like for my sake as a cosplayer, but I'm pretty happy with this. And you know what? I could actually say a lot more. It really has been an eventful week. But let's get back to the project. Here is the key. I have been working on sanding it all this week. You can see how much freaking sanding I've done, like how many fills there are there. I'm very happy with it. So originally the plan was to literally just spray filler primer on this to make it so it didn't literally look like pieces of paper, right? Again, kinda. Oversimplified, but kinda. That didn't happen because of my flippin' malfunctioning can of filler primer. So I did this the hard way. I did actual fills, and you know, I'm not thrilled that I wasted a bunch of time doing this. Okay, that at least is true, not oversimplified. Like, I did not want to do actual fills. I wanted to really just throw on some spackle and maybe even set a time limit sanding. Like, say 1 hour and done, like wherever I'm at, call it a day. I may be stupid, but we've looped back around to the truth somehow. Oh, yeah. But I am kind of thrilled that I can use this as an example right now, because this is actually a really good stage 1 of sanding a prop. And I mean stage 1. I know a lot of people know me for my crazy embroidery stuff, but I have won an entire contest with an armor build with a giant prop, no less. And that was Guts from Berserk, won like best overall craftsmanship is I think what the award was called. It's whatever the highest award was at AB at the time. They keep changing the names of the awards. It's really confusing. I really love that costume, so it was really cool to get the recognition for that, but there are a lot of things that I did on that costume that are different than this. When I say that this is stage 1 fill work, that's because I mean this is step 1. On Guts, this was literally my first step, was doing stuff like this. I literally put glue down, literally put filler down, and literally slapped filler primer down. And that was my step 1. And I did that like 5 times. Part of that was because there was an actual issue with the primer. I'm beginning to think I just had an issue with that primer now that the cans malfunctioned. But I did that a bunch of times to make it as smooth as possible. And this is not even close to as smooth as Guts is. If I look at this from a judge's perspective, I can immediately point out issues. Right there, it's not smooth enough. Right there, right here. The whole like bottom side of this is horrible. There's an issue right here, it's underfilled. There's a lot of issues, and while this looks really, really good, it looks a lot better than it did when it was just the paper, and it's a lot smoother, and I'm really happy with it for this project. This is not what I would take to a competition. Anything can win at a competition because ultimately you're going up against whoever shows up. So this could be the best work you see at a competition. But typically in the master category or at high level competitions where there really isn't categories and it's like expected that you compete at the master level, this is typically not what I'm seeing win awards. However, I have seen a lot of people go into those categories and competitions like that with this stage 1 work. Stage 1 work that really needs to go back in for more fills, go back in for more sanding, even though you don't like sanding. Nobody likes sanding, get a grip. IMO, this is just not competition finished, and it's not gonna be what wins an award. Or because I don't necessarily know who's entering your contest or whatever, this is typically not what you will see win an award. Also, you don't have to try to win an award at a contest. You can absolutely just enter and show off your work and have a great time. Don't think this is me being like, everybody must be perfect and must be competitive and trying for the top spot. It's so much more important to have a good time, and you should always have goals beyond competitive goals, even if you are a competitive person. But genuinely, because I have a lot of people who are here for competition content on this channel, please consider what I've said in terms of this prop, but also in terms of armor, also how this could cross over into sewing work, like what the equivalent of a step 1 would be for sewing versus actually finishing a garment. Please consider it. All right, plan for this. I gotta do the detail lines, essentially the 2 little ridges that go right here across the top of the key. Originally, my plan was to just get some rectangle EVA foam strips and slap them on there, but I don't really want to do that because it's freaking cold out and I don't want to use glue that's good for EVA foam outside right now. And also, it's cold inside. Anyway, I don't want to go outside because it's colder, but it's cold inside too, so I think I'm going to use some scrap Worbla to try and clean up some space in my storage. And I neglected to say that Worbla needs a heat gun. I can use the heat gun with the Worbla and be warm.
And I'll just plop it right on top and it should be good.
If anyone had any questions about me using Worbla scraps for this project, I hope that this answers them. I feel a little crazy and old saying this one, but I kind of think it needs to be said. So like, if you don't know what Worbla is, it's a brand name for a thermoplastic, a word I hope is pretty self-explanatory, that used to be really popular among cosplayers until the EVA foam coup happened. Unlike some notable pro cosplayers who will really focus on a specific or limited range of materials they specialize in, like but not limited to EVA foam foamsmiths, I am very much a person who believes in using a variety of materials. Like, you'll not catch me making an armor build out of only EVA foam or only Worbla or only leather or whatever because it's popular or my specialty or something. You'll find me using a variety of materials that do different things, and I'll be using them for a whole variety of reasons. While there are definitely things I don't like about Worbla, like one, it's literally plastic. Like, there are inherently issues with that and things that I just won't use it for. And despite its popularity being long past its public eye heyday, it's still one of my favorite materials. It's really workable and you can use every tiny little scrap of it, which I go out of my way to do throughout many different projects. I would recommend giving it a try. Right now, I'm heating up a bunch of scrap pieces and making good old worms out of them, although I think I call them tubes for no good reason. The same way you might prep clumps of clay before starting to build a shape out with that. Although lucky for me, one of the detail lines on this key will be made directly out of a worm. So like no real sculpting at all. Okay, the thing about Worbla is it's super cool, but the thicker it gets, one, the heavier it gets, but two, you have to keep it warm because heating up the inside gets more and more difficult. Also, Worbla gets hot. Worbla gets hot! The sky is blue! A lot of people like using like silicone gloves with it. I've never felt like I've needed it for black Worbla or like original like brown Worbla, but I would definitely recommend it for like crystal. It takes a lot of heat. And that's not to be confused with clear. I've really not shaped a lot of clear. I've really like put clear together and then worked with crystal on top of it. Because clear is very easy to dye, but crystal's like more the texture a lot of people want. Usually people don't really want just a transparent sheet. I Actually, that's a lie. Some people do really want the transparent sheets. I don't particularly like them because they're not like diffused. And I feel like people usually use lights with them. So I like having like a solid like faux cast Worbla, which is what Crystal's used for. Past me is clearly struggling to find the words here as I work, so this version of me is just gonna jump in for a second and say, Worbla's transparent art, or what's commonly just called clear Worbla to the cosplay community, cannot be shaped in the way a lot of people seem to think it can be, in the sense that it can't be sculpted in the way original Finesse art or even black art can. And as a bonus, it also doesn't really take to like budget style vacuum forming. Like it's truly just a clear sheet and not translucent, diffused, and good for glow effects. It's completely, you can see each individual LED like looking through a window clear. You can kind of get a non-complex curve going with it. And like Past Me said, you can definitely dye it, but that's all the average crafter is really gonna get out of it alone. I think a lot of people who think that they can use clear Worbla for like cool light up elements would genuinely be better off learning about how to diffuse lights and or just sewing clear vinyl instead and shaping that through the sewing process. This isn't a Worbla video. I'm not gonna keep talking about it, but clear Worbla really is a bit of a pain. Hence my love of crystal Worbla, which while having some caveats, like definitely more of a learning curve, I find you can do so much more with. Okay, the next ring we're doing like around the key, it's the same process, but it's gonna be more difficult because it's gonna be ultimately like a much bigger tube and it's gonna take a lot more to stay heated and like remain pliant, like keep the qualities of a heated thermoplastic. So I'm gonna just try and, we're gonna do our best with this. This is usually not how I do it. Usually when I do something this big, I'll like fill it with UVA foam so that it's less Worbla that I have to heat. And that's what I'd recommend doing, honestly, because I'm trying to just use some scraps. We're gonna see how far we can take this. Like, I'm just curious if I can manage a piece, like a hunk of Worbla this big. Because this is not usually how you work with this. Alright, we're gonna start with this while trying to keep these other pieces warm to build into it. And we'll see how it goes. Also, one thing I'll recommend when working with Worbla, try to wear 100% cotton, or like a natural fiber. I usually wear cotton, but plastic fibers do heat up very fast, and you don't want singed clothes. Yeah, this is already becoming rough to work with, but let's keep going. I'm gonna add a new segment. I think I need this just a smidge longer. I always find how I work with Worbla so funny because I've done metals studies and you really don't want to twist your metal a lot because it like hurts the integrity of it. And yet that's exactly what I do for the Worbla, and it's for the same reason. It's because I'm trying to make it more malleable. Which is like good and bad. Like if I overwork it, this could just like crumble. But for now, it makes it better at sculpting. So you just gotta be careful. You can't like take it too far. I would never do this many times with metal, and here I am constantly doing it with Worbla. Okay, here we go. Big twist time. Yeah, you can see it's kind of like it's going from being very smooth to like breaking apart, like the texture's getting rougher, but it's good for sculpting. Okay, I flattened it slightly too much, but that's fine. Once again, this is not a, like, contest piece. Alright, I think that's pretty much as good as this is getting.
I know, you're probably going crazy being like, stop putting those scissor textures into it, which is fair. But yeah, that looks pretty nice. So here's the thing about this. I'm gonna let this cool down, and I'm actually gonna heat these up and make them a little flatter for use later. And then I'm gonna talk a little bit more about this. Structural integrity gone, good for sculpts later. Okay, so this is cooled down a little bit. You can see it's not perfect, like it's a little wibbly wobbly, it's fine. As I've said, this project is not, you know, a competition piece. I am good with that. If it was a competition piece, I would have spent more time sculpting it. Say that I have taken more time sculpting this and it looks like very, very nice. I have seen a lot of Warbler work just like this in contests. But going back to how I filled this, I'm at a really similar stage with the Warbler here. Like this is step one of doing Warbler. And the biggest reason for that is because a lot of the use cases that people like use Warbler for is for simulating metal. And within that, a lot of the times it's cast metal or it's metal that's been welded together. And the thing about this piece right here is it does not look like cast metal and it does not look welded together. And that is because if you look at it, it looks like two tubes that have been flattened, because I can stick my fingernail underneath the tube. It's still all rounded and like has the evidence that it was once a tube. It looks like a piece of Warbler slapped onto my prop. And while my prop is now becoming like one big smooth piece, like it looks like it was like cast as one piece, you can no longer like see the join here or the join here. This completely stands out. Like it does not look, it looks like it was slapped on. It does not look like it was cast with the piece. And hi, I collect useless skeleton keys, so I even have an example here. Like they're very smooth. There's no joins. This one is not as good quality as this one. You can see that it was fully cast, which is not ideal for keys, but like you can see the join line like up the cast. I don't know if this camera will pick that up, but you can see it's even on the actual like key part of the key. I don't know what to call that. Teeth? Beats me. Whereas this one, which is better made, was cast in a specific shape, and then you can see that it was cut so that the key would have its specific like door knob match. But this whole thing fully cast and just this part cut. There's no joins anywhere. It's all a solid piece. So if I were to take something like this into a competition or something that's supposed to be mimicking other metalwork that has similar processes, I need to do something to make it look like this Warbler has not just been slapped on top of my prop. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to be a crazy person and I'm going to fill these edges, and I'm also going to try and fill some of just the Warbler texture. A lot of people seem to know to fill the Warbler texture, get rid of it a little bit, but we got to take that one step further. Just filling the Warbler texture, probably not going to get you any awards. Like, you know, once again, it depends on who shows up to the contest. It could get you an award, but generally speaking, we want to go a couple more steps beyond this. I've actually talked a fair amount to people in panels and possibly on this channel. I'm gonna be real, I feel like I don't know what's even listed on this channel anymore, but generally speaking, one of the things that I talk about with craftsmanship and improving craftsmanship is observing, like seeing what's working and seeing what's not working, seeing how this differentiates from other work that you like know is high quality, stuff like that. Also getting used to critique. You have to notice that this doesn't look like the keys that I just showed you, and there is a way to make it look more like the keys I just showed you. And stuff like this is very easy for judges to pick out in seconds. Like they don't need a 5-minute judging time. They don't need more than that. Some places have like 20-minute judging times, and that's awesome, but like they don't need that much time to see what's been done here. They can see it really, really, really fast. So yeah, I'm gonna fill this a little bit. This ain't gonna be perfect. Right here is still underfilled, but I do want to make it look like it's in general all been cast. I want to make it look in line with the rest of the quality of this, even if it's not perfect.
So this ain't my final point, because I genuinely believe the points to follow are more important, which is really saying something. But to bring it back to the beginning of this video, I can't teach you good craftsmanship. Despite showing you what I think is and isn't working for this prop, I can't teach you how to see this for yourself, unaided, like see the different levels of craft in all the work you'll come across in your life. Nor can I teach you how to finesse your own work into being made with good craftsmanship, and especially not with every process you'll one day work through. It's just not something that can simply be taught like that. But it is something you can learn for yourself, both learn to see and figure out how to do. A lot of times when making these videos, I really wish I could hand everyone a cheat sheet. Be like, this is all you'll ever need to know for what you want to achieve. But that's just not how the creative process works. Even still, if this is something that you're struggling with, I hope that showing you my process has helped to bring you a step forward. This really ain't my final point though. Hello, I'm back in my garage. I didn't think this shot through. I have my emergency emotional support filler primer. The goal is to spray 2 coats on this. This is looking pretty good. So we're gonna spray 2 coats on it. It doesn't say when this is gonna be ready to handle, so I think my plan is to spray a couple coats on this side and then flip it and spray a couple coats on the other side after like an hour or 2. The reason I'm not just doing this again is because the Warbler has kind of made it a little bit off balance. So that's where we're at. At that point, it's probably gonna be too cold to do anything else today, but hopefully that'll be it. Also, I gotta say, this just looks so freaking cool right now with all the paper mache and fill. Like it just looks, I love it. That's the artist in me, I just love it. I'm seeing art and everything anyway. But yeah, it's gonna be covered, so thought I'd show it to you for a second, and let's do the thing. Alright, let's actually talk about it. The elephant in the room. How the actual f did I make this out of trash? Like, sculpt this out of faux fur and now it's looking like this. You can acknowledge it. Say it with me. Hell, acknowledge it with me right now. This process has been a show. And yet, it was the right process for me for this prop. Alright, I'm gonna be the realist. This is not filling at all. Like, in the past, if I do like 2 coats of this, it's almost like it levels the entire surface. This is functioning as regular primer. I don't know what's up with this. I don't know if it's the weather, or if they just changed their formula, or if I got the wrong thing. It says it's filler, but I've been known to be a fool before. So, I might be doing more hand filling, which is the worst thing in the whole world. Mostly because I didn't really need this to be perfect. I'm actually really happy with a lot of this. I do think it looks kind of busted and it's pretty awesome. But there is a couple things that like this would have really helped had it been like working like I thought it would or whatever. So I do kind of want to fix those. We're gonna see what we're doing with time. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if I made this joke on camera, but at the beginning of this project, I was like, man, this is for a mono cosplay, but if I don't finish it, it can always be for a 6 cosplay. This might be for a 6 cosplay for this Halloween. Okay, jokes aside, because all that nonsense with the filler primer is genuinely just a regular artist roadblock. Like, sometimes things just don't go according to Keikaku. That's totally normal, and a thing that every creative has to learn to accept and work through. But that one comment hidden in those clips, where I mentioned being happy with a lot of this prop, that's worth breaking down as I do a whole bunch of layers of spray paint. I didn't make this prop for a contest. There were none of the rules and competition-specific values I brought up earlier to even be considered when making this piece. And while I used working on this as an opportunity to talk about those and about developing your abilities to recognize different levels of craftsmanship, having good craft on this piece, to really any degree, was not required at all. All I had to do was try to meet my own goals within my own limitations. And I did, and I'm happy with what I accomplished. Everyone, regardless of if they're trying to enter a contest, has their own goals and limitations.
Like a quick update, I actually busted out a new can of filler, right? Because I did get 2 cans of emotional support filler primer. This is feeling a lot more like what I'm used to. So, not to say this is gonna make my work perfect, like it's still an imperfect piece. But this is a lot more along the lines of what I was expecting it to behave like, so I think I just got really, really unlucky with 2 cans, which kind of sucks, but here we are, I guess.
All right, you can absolutely sand better than I have sanded on this project. I'm sure you can still see imperfections and whatever, but it is diminishing returns for a Halloween costume. While you should go overboard for a craftsmanship piece that you really want to be perfect, if you really want it to be perfect, you never have to actually go overboard for a craftsmanship piece, but if you want to, you can absolutely sand more than this. But right now, for this project, I simply do not care. Okay, I am a mega dweeb, but it can be really cool to look at the rules, maybe even a rubric for a contest, and strategize about your build. Like, sit down and think about techniques you want to add in based on how the number of techniques are weighted, or difficulty of technique is weighted, or that whole how creativity is used example I brought up earlier is weighted, like whatever, all of those things. It's just kind of empowering and motivating to sit there and try to give yourself the best chance you can. But you're also just a person with person limitations, a lot of which can be very specific to you. While I would have loved to use the more right techniques and process for this key, like, I'm talking imagine this as an original sculpt I made a mold for, and then slush cast in metal so it's hollow, and then chemically patinaed and hand waxed so the colors are just brilliant. That's just not feasible for me. And while I think the rise of using these traditional arts in more quote-unquote right techniques, like, it's so cool the things that people are going out of their way to learn, and in turn make more accessible to others. Like, this great big wealth of knowledge constantly being shared is bonkers amazing. I am on a budget. And not just any old budget, I am on a trash budget. The budget of making things with trash from my house. Well, and a $5 floral ring. In this case, the right technique that might even blow people's socks off at a contest was just not the right technique for me. And side note, because I have, well, not STFU disease, while I will say that stuff like this is all super cool, and I love sharing knowledge, like I wouldn't be here if I didn't, I do think we are, in a way, sitting on the cosplay contest event horizon of how far we're willing to take techniques. Like, we haven't quite crossed it yet, and I'm not even really entirely sure where the line is. And I'm sure where I draw it would be different than like where other people would draw it anyway. But I do think there is such a thing as taking a technique so far that it no longer counts as craftsmanship and should not be worth anything in a cosplay craftsmanship contest. Like, you can go overboard if you want for yourself, but we're getting really, really close to this point where it is like, take it out of the build book, because farming does not count as cosplay crafting and should not be added to anybody's overall craftsmanship score. Just some food for thought there. Anyway, something cool like casting metal was not the right technique for me for this build. But making this out of a certain material that I truly cannot believe is inside this little prop was. And I can only assume literally everyone watching this video will be limited by what they can do versus what they want to do in some way when trying to create something with good craft. I can't directly help you with this, and I don't know your limitations, and I can't commit to helping everyone who may watch this. But I can say it's worth it to ask yourself what's good for what you're trying to do, which may or may not include a contest. And also, what's good just for you. And add one more thing to that, I can also say the illusion of the quote-unquote right technique may be the path forward in regards to what's best for both of those things. Lads, I freaking love it. I think it looks so incredibly cool. It looks like a busted key. Like, every little nick looks like it's telling a story. The shine on it is so nice. Like, I ended up using like a satin spray, right, to try and dull it a little bit, and I think it's just the right amount of dull. I am so pleased. Everything about it, so pleased. So naturally, I'm gonna ruin it. Okay, I don't have a ton of space. It is what it is. Lighting has been so bad lately. But essentially, I have done a lot of, like, painting of, like, metal looking things in my life. And usually when I do this, I don't do a lot of weathering of the metal itself. I'll do like distressing in the sense that I'll put like dirt on it and I'll put like blood on it or whatever, like fake blood, but I don't change the metal itself. And I have always really wanted to learn how to like mimic a patina, and this project is like the one to do that on, because like a key would be very, very like naturally patinaed. So This looks awesome. I love it. It's a 10 out of 10 from me. I've had so much fun with it. I'd be very happy with this right here, but I really want to try to level up my work and try to create a fake patina. So I'm going to F around, try to learn. I've got a lot of random metallics that I've like collected over time, as well as like browns and blacks and stuff, and I'm just gonna try stuff and see if any of it works, because I literally figured I can try this, I can do a little photo shoot with it for this video, see how it looks, see if I'm happy with it, and if I am, great, and if not, I can literally kind of just sand it down and paint it again with the spray paint. It's not gonna be like a huge difference. I know what color this is, I know the finish, I can recreate it. Metal like weathers in a really interesting way, especially metal that people touch. Essentially where people are touching it, because of all the like natural oils in your skin, it gets really shiny. So like if you see like a statue that's like within reaching distance of people, there will be like these big gold spots on it, like on like a bronze statue, right? Whereas where people aren't touching it, it gets like really like naturally brown looking. And I'd really like to try to mimic that, like make the outside of this look really shiny and gold, but kind of like the inside, like in these little crevices and whatever, I'd like to make it more dull and more brown. And I don't know how this is gonna go. I'm literally just gonna mess around. Now, the dumbest thing about me is it's freaking 2025, almost 2026, and I still don't have an airbrush because I'm a dope. So I'm using a bunch of sponges to do this. I will say, I do like this in terms of experimenting. Like, I feel like it helps me, like, see my options a bit better. Oh my god, this is coming out really interesting. I think there's a lot of people that would definitely just prefer the shiny look to what I'm doing. And that's super legit. I totally get it. But I'm actually kind of really fucking loving this. Because this says a lot more like actual natural metal to me. I definitely need to get darker over here though. This is just not gonna be everyone's cup of tea, but this looks so cool. I think one of the issues with metal is a lot of people like the idea of metal, like plastic, chrome, more than they like how actual metal looks. But the thing is like, I really like how real metal looks. Like actual cast metal. Like that key that I was showing as an example, like that really nice looking one. Oh my god. It's like one of my favorite looks for a material. I am so thrilled with this. Okay, I've been messing around a little bit longer and I've let this dry a little bit. I think I actually want to go, whoops. I don't know how I managed to do that, but I'll use that at some point. I think I want to use this a little bit more than this. This is looking a little bit too brassy, and I thought it was gonna work, so it's making me a little brassed off. That's where that's at. Is that a phrase that people use genuinely? I don't know why my brain just went to that. That's a movie. It is a movie that no one I know has seen, but it is one of the most well-known movies of all time because of this line. Truth is, I thought it mattered. I thought that music mattered. But does it bollocks? Not compared to how people matter. This ain't part of the quote, but do I need to censor that word? I don't even know. Because right after that line in one of the most famous songs ever, you hear... Yeah, I'm actually not going to keep this clip in because YouTube has gone off the deep end with copyright claims. But originally here, I was singing the opening to Chumbawamba's Tub Thumpin', because on the album version, like the album Tub Thumper, that is how the song starts. Like, so many people know that album and know that song, and yeah, that's where the line comes from. The 1996 movie Brassed Off, which, dare I suggest, didn't be a movie dweeb and a real person who can experience empathy on Maine, even though that's uncool, is a movie that I think is worth seeing as an artist. Anyway, so I want to use a little bit more of the, like, the darker color, it's a bit duller, it's a bit darker. I'm gonna try and use this paint before it, like, dries on the sponge. And we are gonna go from there. I think I'm gonna try to blend a little bit of this other gold that I have, just to try and make it like a little bit more blended overall. I mean, I guess maybe I make it more brassy that way, but just to blend what I have, you know? Okay, I really cannot stress how happy this is making me. Also, I'm sorry, my fingers are nasty now, but this is very cool. This is everything I want. It's not gonna be the look for everyone, for real. A lot of people are gonna like just the metallic spray paint a lot better, and that's a-okay. I'm really enjoying this because I'm like learning a new technique, and it's something that I really like the look of. Like, I really love the look of cast metal. I really love the look of naturally patinaed metal, but art is subjective. You just may not like this as much, which actually kind of leads me to something I've been wanting to talk about. This is something that I've mentioned throughout, but I haven't really talked more about, and that's the idea that nothing is guaranteed to win a contest. Like, no matter how good you make something or how poorly you make something, there is always the chance that it could win, and that is because ultimately you're going up against whoever happened to sign up for the contest. So if you're the only one there, no matter how objectively not well made your costume is, you might win by default. They might just be like, you showed up, here's your gold medal at the end. But you could also make something really, really, really cool that could win Best in Show at almost any contest and still not win Best in Show if someone shows up wearing something that just happens to be better than what you made. They have fewer imperfections, they've done a variety of advanced techniques, they've done them near perfectly, etc. And I'm being really serious about this because cosplay contests are won and lost by the people who show up for them. The best runner in the world, if they don't choose to run the Boston Marathon, they can't win it. It's gonna be won by somebody who has participated in the Boston Marathon. I've talked before on this channel about how I think it's really important to have goals other than winning a cosplay contest when you sign up for a cosplay contest, and it's because of this. There is no way to guarantee that you will win a cosplay contest because ultimately it is determined by who shows up and how your work happens to compare to theirs in that moment. So this isn't my best work. I don't intend to enter it in a contest, but I am sure that there's work like this that does win contests, and it did deserve to win when compared to the other entrants. On the other side of this hypothetical, there are plenty of contests that this wins nothing because IMO, it's just not that great, and it's just not nearly as good as whatever the other contestants have brought to the table. Even if I had made this perfectly, like the hypothetical perfect, there is always the chance that someone else showed up with something better, something also perfect, but something with maybe more techniques, more whatever. It's all about how things compare. So I can sit here and talk about good craftsmanship and talk about, you know, getting used to critique, trying to train your eye, like trying to see what adds finesse to something. Even doing all of these things doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna win. And it's really, really important to me that everyone knows this. I also want to put out there that I really think this is cool. And if you also think this is cool, this could be the coolest thing you see at a contest. Like, you may really resonate with something, but something looking cool also doesn't mean it's going to win. It just means you think it looks cool. While a costume that has a technique like this might be my favorite in a contest, if it's not the technique that deserves to win, like, and I'm judging, it's not going to win. And if I see it from the audience, like, I'll recognize that this is my favorite, but it doesn't change the fact that other people had better craftsmanship. Actually, a little while back, there was a contest that I judged, and this is the only time this has happened, but one of the contestants walked into the room, and they just had such a beautiful costume that I was like, honest to God, moved to tears. I really could not get over how beautiful that costume was. It's one of the most stunning things. I still think about it. It was really lovely. It did not win the contest. It did win an award because it deserved that award. But it wasn't just, oh, I like it, I'll give it Best in Show, because that's not how competition spaces like this work. Okay, I can flip it. We're flipping. I know the idea of winning is super cool, and it genuinely is something that I hope everyone gets to experience at some point. I don't know how that would work, but it's something that I hope for. But there really is no guaranteed way to win a costume contest. As much as I sit here and I try to make things more transparent on my channel, I try to give people the resources to understand contests as well as improve their own work for them, there still really is nothing that will guarantee you a win at a cosplay contest. And I'd highly recommend just focusing on you. You're just one person. So please go out there and make goals that you're interested in, that improve the craft in ways that you're interested in learning about, and have a good time. If you have made it this far into the video, still don't look at the runtime. But don't turn it off just yet, because I do have one last thing that I'd like to say about good craftsmanship, and more so in a general sense than specifically in terms of contests. The biggest, wackiest, and most important thing to acknowledge when trying to learn how to create costumes with good craftsmanship is actually one that most people tend to avoid talking about. Even though IMO, it's kind of one of the coolest things in the world. Because to be blunt, it can be viewed as spectacularly discrediting. And TBH side note, there is a lot to be said about the cosplay community's current obsession with infographics and build books and just like appearing super knowledgeable and skilled. Even sometimes like trained, despite the aforementioned training being like one workshop, on social media in a way that I am simply not going to get into here. Although I will say my personal favorite is when people present stuff, like their literal personal opinions or like a specific echo chamber's worth of personal opinions as not just reputable data, but indisputable fact. You know, saying shit like, 19 out of my 20 friends have the same opinion as me, and therefore I'm right. And anyone who argues with me is wrong. And also someone's getting kicked out of the group chat later. Or like, 100 of the people who chose to follow my personal Instagram account, absolutely crazy, have the same opinion as me. And therefore, I'm right, and anyone who says otherwise is wrong and getting blocked. Like, I see that and I'm like, wow, riveting. I'm exaggerating for the bit if that wasn't clear. Like, please don't all come for my throat. Because it's not even like data like that isn't interesting, or there isn't a place for it at all in this space. It's just in how it's presented. Like, it can be really cool to analyze, and I do love seeing data analyzed like that if it's done well. But it also can be pretty dishonest if it's only being used in a way that's designed to uphold a certain appearance. And people can get really attached to upholding appearances and not wanting to feel discredited. This is just a side note. I'm sure I've ruffled enough feathers with my side notes today. Definitely this last one. And I'm sure I've rambled enough. Like, I am sorry about the runtime. Although I'm also pretty sure that this is gonna be coming to a head soon. And on a community-wide scale, like much larger than this little channel. But like, keep all this at the back of your mind for the actual segment, because like, this is gonna be the realest of real talks. There are no skill mastery requirements for having good craftsmanship. You can create something with good craftsmanship without having a ding-dang clue what you're doing or what you're talking about. You don't need to fully master a skill to do it well. And like, I don't mean for if you just want to make a clean build for you, yourself, and you, like literally just for fun. I also mean in craftsmanship competitions, where competitors are compared to each other by judges. There are literally no skill mastery requirements within the cosplay community or contest community to actually be considered good at what you're doing. And yet, you can still make work with good craftsmanship. This is actually a little hard to put into words, so please bear with me. I've definitely talked about this on this channel before to a degree, specifically in regards to cosplay competitions, when talking about the skill level disqualification system, and how there are no requirements to enter any categories, simply things that may disqualify you from certain categories. And I've taken that further, discussing how people placing themselves in certain categories, provided they aren't disqualified from them, can affect the outcome of a contest in spectacularly weird ways. Do check out those videos if those discussions sound interesting. But today we're going into uncharted waters here, because today I want to talk about how any cosplayer who wants to can create pieces with good craftsmanship, can even win best in show at a contest against people who would traditionally be considered a master of a craft, despite not being one themselves. So let's start off by talking about what a master crafter actually is out there in the real world, full of normies who are judging me for my Leon S. Kennedy eat a bag. Generally speaking, to be able to consider yourself a master of a craft, or really any skill, you need to be able to execute said skill cleanly, consistently, and quickly. Although that last bit is a bit subjective to the skill itself and general time allotments expected of it. I'm gonna use me as an example because I know what I can and can't do, and I won't be stepping on any toes with just me here. And I'm not gonna beat around the bush. Like, if you unsub because you've decided I'm not being humble enough for you, so be it. Like, I rarely talk myself up anyway. But yeah, I am an incredibly skilled sewist. I am what many people would consider to be a master sewist. I've tried to mention this throughout the video because I was attempting to prepare everyone, mostly myself, for this point, but I studied fashion design for undergrad and I've got like 20 years of sewing experience under my belt. I can sew things, including super difficult things, really well, like really cleanly and really fast. Even in the spaces I'm in with other people who have studied this intensively and like practiced their off, there are few people I personally know who can sew on the level that I casually sit down and sew at. There was a super funny trend going around recently that was freaking hilarious, mind you, with sewists being like, AI couldn't sew a sleeve wrong and rip it out and repin it for an hour and then sew it wrong again. And the whole trend was like a bunch of people coming up with various degrees of sewing mistakes that they've made as amateurs. And it was so funny and so relatable as someone who was once in that same position. And also AI, by the way. But I was also like, literally could not be me right now. Like, I don't know when the last time I made a sewing mistake was, let alone one that detrimental. When it comes to sewing, I don't really make mistakes. I even notice when my bobbin runs out at 2 a.m. Like, I can feel it, even if I'm too tired to see it behind my machine's foot. And this example is hard to say because it feels like a joke because there are so many people who I know who can do that, but a lot of amateurs can't. When it comes to sewing, I'm good at what I do. And now I'm actually patting myself on the back, like just this once as a little treat. The fit on my work is nice, like it's always what I'm going for. All right, no more of that, we're done. You can exhale. And yet, there are cosplayers out there who would not be what society considers master sewists, who make better sewn work than me. And like a lot of cosplayers too, like I'm always running into them. And it's not because I just overhyped myself, and it's not because they're being too humble or not telling everyone the whole story. They're amateurs and they're often entirely self-taught and still very much learning. It's because they took the time and effort to put more into their work. Most cosplayers don't have to do things with a certain level of skill in one shot in a set amount of time, the way that masters of sewing might have to do that for something like a stitcher day job, which is definitely how I sew most of my cosplays, for the record. They can sit there and redo a seam until it's as close to perfect as humanly possible. And people do this and frequently create things with mind-bogglingly good craftsmanship. And it's literally so flippin' cool to see that people do this and that anyone could do the same in this space if they wanted to. I'm gonna keep using me as an example here. This time, just one of the things I've made though. A while back, I made a manga-only Crollo, like Crollo from Hunter x Hunter. Crollo designed for fun. Added my own flair to it, had a blast. Like 2 people have recognized the costume in the years that I've had it. Wouldn't want it any other way. Anyway, it's an original pattern of mine with like a billion gajillion pieces, all sewn together at these insane angles and then like top stitched down for good measure. And I really just sewed this with one attempt for every single line of stitching. And like every seam is a blessed seam, despite them all being sewn with casual levels of effort from me. Because it wasn't a contest build. I just gave it one attempt. I wanted to F around and find out. And like, it's been a hot second since I looked over that build. But if I remember right, there is literally one issue that I have with the sewing on that build. Like literally one spot that is below average for me, and I probably should have taken the time to redo. Well, that and I ran out of interfacing when I was also running out of time to finish the project, so the collar is a little floppy. But like two issues on that build. Out of all that sewing work, someone else could take on this build, even though they aren't nearly as good at sewing as I am. Even though they aren't what would traditionally be considered good. They may only complete every seam on the 5th or 6th try. Like struggle real hard because they're just not as skilled a sewist as me. Maybe even doubt theirself the whole experience through, do a little casual con crunch cry. And they could make this cosplay better than me. And while I haven't seen someone do that with this exact look, just because this is manga only, like no one knows this design. I'm using it as an example for how insane it is, not how popular it is. People do just that with their costumes. Sometimes sewing a seam is literally like someone who has struggled to all trying to understand how to do a character build, and man, it is rough around the edges. Just once having the perfect run of a FromSoft boss. And you know what? They really did that. And it's flippin' amazing that they did that, and they deserve praise for it. And I'm so glad that this community has developed in a way that's created a space for people to work towards something like that. And that they have the opportunity to achieve something like that, even if they'll never have anything like the life I've lived. Like, it's just so cool. And quick aside, it would be really unfair of me to not acknowledge that, like, actually making these attempts is genuinely a path forward in mastering a craft. Like, there are many people in this community well on their way to becoming what would traditionally be considered a master of a skill. Like, you don't sit there and try something dozens, if not hundreds of times without learning a thing or two. But genuinely, you do not have to be a legitimate master of anything to have master level cosplay craftsmanship. And that to me is cool as f. This possibility existing at all when creating work and trying for good craftsmanship, despite being cool, is wacky AF too. Like, just wild to think about. And it is discrediting. Like, a lot of people on socials don't want to admit how long their stuff is taking, and how many attempts they've made, and where they've cut corners, and whatever. Just because they're genuinely lacking in the skills and experience, even if they are producing an incredible end result. Or the opposite, like they could be like me, have a skill they've genuinely traditionally mastered, and maybe seeing other people create really good work could just make some folks feel weird. Like, especially depending on the situation, like it could be really hard to acknowledge that others are making better work than you despite overarching skill gaps. But I think this is really important to talk about, as this is both an opportunity and a potential pitfall. I know, finally the reason I actually brought this up. I guess I was just trying to mince words. Like, I was trying to be really clear about what I was saying. Like, I didn't want anyone jumping to conclusions. Because now, not to mince words, there has been some high-strung energy in the cosplay community lately. Specifically the terminally online portion of the community. Did I make anyone flinch with that diction there? That's all I'm saying there. Just something to think on. And if I never see you again for saying that, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. You have as long as you want to make a costume. And you can try over and over again to create it with good craftsmanship. But you also have as long as you want to make a costume. And you can try over and over again to make it with good craftsmanship. This is a huge, Dragon Slayer sized, if you will, double-edged sword. So I hope that everyone understands my sentiment when I say completing a costume is so much better than having one just in progress forever. There's a reason that I compete once every couple of years. I couldn't swing it this year for a whole bunch of reasons, including my trash budget, but I'm hoping to next year for the record. And especially when creating casual costumes, I lean on my sewing skills to make stuff that's good enough for me without having to redo anything, and to just have fun with, rather than always creating at the height of my craftsmanship abilities and redoing things until they're perfect ad infinitum. It's cool to really push oneself with certain projects, or work to overall better oneself. And I literally love the opportunities in this space. The way you can do what works for you is equitable in a way that I think many people take for granted. But there is a line for everyone where choices can become unsustainable and unhealthy. And I think it's important for everyone to find where that line is within themselves and recognize that craftsmanship is always going to be better, more good even, than some unattainable level of perfect craftsmanship. In previous videos, I've defined good craftsmanship as both a combination of understanding of skill and artful execution of said skill, or in short, finesse. But there are genuinely more things to consider when trying to create with good craft, and I hope that this horrible runtime of the video has helped you to consider them. And of course, without further ado, my trash key! And yeah, I did not finish mono, by the way, lol. I love it! It's made of faux fur! Well, I really hope I don't have something in my teeth because I was just eating Oreos. But happy Halloween! It's Halloween for me today, so I'm right on time for me, but for you guys it'll be a little bit late, sorry. I'm sorry it kept getting cold and rainy when I was trying to spray paint this. And then I got overly bummed and demotivated because I missed a deadline, and now it's April. This is a character flaw. I'm working on it. You're not taking my Halloween vibes from me, though. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the making of this little prop, as well as the discussion that I wrote to go with it. I know it's been a while since my last video. There is a reason for that. I have been doing a year-long research project. And I don't quite know when it's gonna be ready. I don't know when it's going up. I don't know if it's gonna be my next video. I hope it's not my next video. I hope I can get at least another video out before then. But I'm hoping that it'll be live early 2026 or ever. This project is driving me up the wall. I may literally need to rethink how I'm gonna present it. Don't be surprised if I do, despite what I'm about to say. And I really hope that it'll be worth it. Until then, there are other cosplay discussions on my channel, and hey, if you want to see how I painted this little jacket, feel free to check out the video I made about it a couple years ago. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it. It's been so long since I posted, but it is because I've been working, not because I've been dilly-dallying. So please give it a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already, and here's a little taste of the upcoming video. You all say you want regional information. The US is different from Europe. This side of the US is different from the other side of the US, yada yada. I'll give you regions. And then I'll give you more. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you all again soon.